Welcome to Pure Love Stories, your destination for the most incredible emotional stories that will make you believe in the power of love. If you love love stories, hit subscribe and let us know where in the world you're watching from. The elevator doors hadn't even closed behind her when Sarah Mitchell realized she'd made a terrible mistake, not coming to Hartfield Industries. Though that was debatable now, standing in the gleaming 42nd floor lobby with her visitor badge still warm against her chest. No, the mistake was thinking she could slip quietly into this world, that she could be invisible here, the way she'd learned to be everywhere else. The woman at reception, Claudia, according to her nameplate, was staring at her with an expression Sarah had seen before. Not quite contempt. Something sharper, more personal. "You're the new junior analyst," Claudia said. Not a question. "Yes, Sarah Mitchell. I'm supposed to report to." "I know who you're supposed to report to." Claudia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Good luck with that." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach, but she kept her expression neutral. 6 years of scholarship committees, financial aid offices, and academic advisors who expected her to fail had taught her that much. Never let them see you flinch. The corporate strategy department occupied the entire eastern wing of the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gray expanse of Seattle, rain streaking the glass in thin rivulets. Sarah had grown up 2 hours south of here, in a town where the biggest employer was a timber mill that had closed when she was 12. This building probably cost more than her entire hometown's annual budget. She found her cubicle, one of 20 identical spaces in a maze of low walls and humming monitors. Her new supervisor's office door was closed, the blinds drawn. A yellow post-it note stuck to her monitor read, "Orientation packet in drawer. Review by noon. KW, Catherine Walsh, Senior Director of Corporate Strategy." Sarah had researched everyone in the department before accepting the position. Walsh had an MBA from Wharton, 15 years at Hartfield, and a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and impossible to please. The kind of person who either made your career or ended it. Sarah opened the drawer. The orientation packet was 2 inches thick. It was 9:47 a.m. She started reading. By 11:30, her eyes burned and her coffee had gone cold, but she'd absorbed most of it. Company history, organizational structure, strategic priorities for the next fiscal year. She was highlighting a section on competitive analysis when a shadow fell across her desk. "You're in my chair." Sarah looked up. The woman standing over her was maybe 30, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah's entire wardrobe. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. "I'm sorry," Sarah said. "That's my desk. My cubicle. I've been here 3 years." The woman's voice was pleasant, conversational. Her eyes were not. "So I'm not sure why you're sitting in it." Sarah's throat went dry. She glanced at the nameplate she'd noticed earlier but hadn't questioned. Amanda Pierce, Strategic Analyst. There must be some mistake. HR said. HR makes a lot of mistakes. Amanda leaned against the cubicle wall, arms folded. "But I'm guessing this one's intentional. You're the diversity hire, right?" The words hit like a slap. Sarah felt heat crawl up her neck, but she kept her voice level. "I'm the new junior analyst. If there's been a mix-up with the seating assignments, I'm happy to speak with." "There's no mix-up." A man appeared behind Amanda, tall, early 30s, expensive watch. "Walsh's reorganizing. Again. Apparently Amanda's being moved to the overflow area to make room for." He looked Sarah up and down. "Fresh talent." Amanda's laugh was bright and sharp. "Is that what we're calling it?" Sarah stood, carefully setting down her highlighter. She was 5'4" in flats. Amanda had at least 3 inches on her. The man, whose name she didn't know, loomed even taller. But Sarah had learned a long time ago that the worst thing you could do in a moment like this was shrink. "I don't want anyone's desk," she said quietly. "If this is someone else's assigned space, I'll move. Just tell me where I'm supposed to be." "The overflow area's down the hall," the man said, jerking his thumb over his shoulder. "Past the break room." You can't miss it. It's where they put everyone they're planning to fire in 6 months. Something twisted in Sarah's chest, but before she could respond, a door opened across the department. All three of them turned. Catherine Walsh emerged from her office like a storm front. She was smaller than Sarah had expected from her LinkedIn photo, barely 5'6", but she moved with the kind of authority that made everyone in the vicinity straighten reflexively. Her gray suit was immaculate. Her expression was unreadable. "Ms. Mitchell," she said, her voice carrying across the cubicles. "My office. Now." Sarah grabbed her notebook and followed, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. Amanda and the tall man stepped aside, but not before Sarah caught Amanda's whispered comment. "Dead woman walking." Walsh's office was smaller than Sarah expected but meticulously organized. 2 walls of books. Mostly business strategy, some economics, a few that looked like they might be philosophy. A single photo on the desk. Walsh with 2 teenage girls, all 3 of them mid-laugh. "Close the door," Walsh said, not looking up from her computer screen. Sarah did. She stood, waiting, notebook clutched against her chest like a shield. Walsh typed for another 30 seconds. Then she stopped, removed her reading glasses, and finally looked at Sarah. "Do you know why you're here?" Sarah's mind raced. "For the junior analyst position. I accepted the offer 2 weeks ago. I mean here, in this office, right now." Sarah's stomach dropped. "No, ma'am." Walsh leaned back in her chair, studying Sarah with an expression that gave nothing away. "I didn't request a new junior analyst. I don't need a new junior analyst. In fact, I specifically told HR 3 months ago that my team was fully staffed." The room felt smaller suddenly. "Airless, I don't understand." "You were placed in my department by executive order. Do you know what that means?" Sarah shook her head. "It means someone above me, well above me, decided you belonged here, without consulting me, without going through proper channels." Walsh's tone was perfectly neutral, which somehow made it worse. "So I'll ask you again. Do you know why you're here?" "No." Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I applied through the standard recruitment process. I interviewed with HR and with someone from corporate strategy. I think his name was David Miller. After the second interview, I received an offer letter. I accepted. That's all I know." Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Your resume says you graduated from state. Full scholarship. 3.9 GPA. Double major in economics and statistics. Summer internships at 3 different firms, none of which typically hire state graduates." It wasn't a question, but Sarah nodded anyway. "Impressive," Walsh said, almost suspiciously so, for someone with no connections and no money. The words should have stung, but Sarah had heard variations of them too many times to react. "I worked hard." "I'm sure you did." Walsh put her glasses back on, signaling the conversation was nearing its end. "Here's the situation, Ms. Mitchell. I don't know who your patron is, or what they think they're accomplishing by dropping you into my department. But I run a tight team here. We have standards. We have expectations. And we don't have time to babysit." Sarah's fingers tightened on her notebook. "I don't need babysitting. We'll see." Walsh turned back to her computer. "You have until 5 p.m. to complete the orientation packet and submit a preliminary analysis of the Patterson file. You'll find it in the shared drive under Active Projects. If your work is satisfactory, we'll discuss next steps. If it's not." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sarah stood there for 3 seconds longer, waiting to be dismissed. When Walsh didn't look up, she turned and left, closing the door softly behind her. The department was quieter now. People were at their desks, ostensibly working, but Sarah could feel the weight of their attention. She walked back to the cubicle, Amanda's cubicle, and saw immediately that her orientation packet was gone. Her coffee cup too. The desk had been wiped clean. Her chest went tight. "Looking for something?" She turned. A woman around her age, maybe a year or 2 older, stood in the next cubicle over. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile that seemed genuine. Your stuff's in the overflow area. Amanda had building services move it while you were in with Walsh. Of course she did, Sarah said quietly. I'm Jessica, by the way. Jessica Park. Junior analyst, same as you, except I've been here 8 months and I'm still basically treated like an intern. She stepped around the cubicle wall, lowering her voice. Word of advice? Don't make waves. Don't argue. Don't try to prove anything. Just keep your head down and do exactly what they tell you. Sarah looked at her, at the sympathetic eyes and the nervous smile, and felt something harden inside her chest. She'd heard this advice before, from her mother, who'd spent 30 years cleaning houses for people who never learned her name. From her high school guidance counselor, who'd suggested community college instead of university. From every well-meaning person who thought survival meant making yourself smaller. Thank you, Sarah said. I appreciate it. Jessica's smile brightened with relief. No problem. We've got to stick together, right? If you need anything. Actually, Sarah interrupted gently. I need to find the Patterson file and get to work. Do you know which shared drive Walsh was talking about? Something flickered in Jessica's expression. Disappointment, maybe, or recognition. Yeah, I'll show you. The overflow area turned out to be exactly what the tall man had implied. A converted storage room with no windows and fluorescent lighting that hummed loud enough to give you a headache. There were 4 desks crammed into a space meant for 2. Sarah's orientation packet sat on the one nearest the door, next to a dying fern and a mousepad that said, "Hang in there," above a picture of a cat clinging to a branch. She set down her notebook and got to work. The Patterson file was a mess, 400 pages of financial data, market analysis, and strategic projections for a potential acquisition. The kind of project that would normally take a team weeks to analyze. Walsh wanted a preliminary analysis by 5 p.m. It was noon. Sarah opened a new document and started reading. By 3 p.m., her eyes felt like sandpaper and her shoulders were knotted with tension. But she had something. Not a full analysis, that would be impossible in 5 hours, but a solid preliminary assessment highlighting 3 major risk factors and 2 potential opportunities that weren't immediately obvious in the raw data. By 4:30, she'd refined it into a clean, professional memo with supporting exhibits. At 4:55, she hit send. Then she sat back in her terrible chair in the terrible overflow room and waited. Her phone buzzed at 6:17 p.m. An email from Walsh. Subject line empty. See me tomorrow. 8 a.m. That was all. Sarah stared at the message, trying to decode it. Was she fired? Was the analysis that bad? Or had she somehow passed the test? She packed up her things, turned off the lights, and walked back through the now empty department. Most people had left by 5:30. The floor was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of a vacuum cleaner. She was waiting for the elevator when she heard voices. 2 men, talking in low tones around the corner. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but something in their tone made her still. Complete waste. Walsh is furious. Can't blame her. Having someone forced on your team without consultation? That's a power play. You think it came from the top? A pause. Has to. No one below executive level has that kind of pull. Poor girl doesn't even know she's a pawn. The elevator chimed. Sarah stepped inside, her heart beating faster than it should. She rode down 42 floors in silence, watching the numbers descend. When the doors opened onto the lobby, she stepped out into the evening rain and pulled her coat tight against the cold. Her apartment was in Capitol Hill, a 40-minute bus ride from downtown. She found a seat near the back and pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the city blur past. Do you know why you're here? No, she didn't. But she was starting to suspect the answer mattered a lot more than she'd realized. The bus lurched to a stop. Sarah grabbed her bag and stepped out into the rain, walking the last 3 blocks to her building with her hood up and her thoughts spiraling. She'd worked so hard to get here. 4 years of scholarships and student loans and sleeping 4 hours a night to maintain her GPA while working 20 hours a week at the campus library. 3 brutal rounds of interviews. The impossible joy of opening that offer letter and seeing the salary. more money than her mother had ever made in a year. And now, on her first day, she was already on the edge of losing it all. Sarah climbed the stairs to her third-floor studio, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The apartment was tiny, barely 400 square feet, but it was hers. She'd spent the last 2 weeks making it feel like home. A second-hand couch from Craigslist, a bookshelf she'd assembled herself, a small dining table that doubled as her desk. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and walked to the window. From here, she could just see the top of the Space Needle, lit up against the dark sky. Somewhere in this city was the person who'd forced her into Catherine Walsh's department. Someone powerful enough to override normal hiring procedures. Someone who'd made her a pawn in a game she didn't understand. Sarah pressed her palm against the cold glass and made herself a promise. She was going to find out who and why. But first, she had to survive tomorrow. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. Sarah silenced it immediately, already awake. She'd slept poorly, her mind churning through possibilities. By the time she gave up on sleep at 4:45, she drafted and deleted 3 different game plans for how to handle her 8 a.m. meeting with Walsh. In the end, she settled on the simplest approach. Be prepared, be professional, and don't give them a reason to fire you. She dressed carefully. A navy suit she'd bought on clearance, a white blouse, minimal jewelry, professional armor. Then she made coffee, forced down toast she didn't taste, and reviewed her analysis one more time, looking for weaknesses. At 7:15, she left for the bus. She arrived at Hartfield Industries at 7:42, signed in with building security, and rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. The department was mostly empty, just a few early arrivals hunched over their computers. The overflow room was dark. Sarah flipped on the lights, booted up her computer, and waited. At exactly 8 a.m., her phone buzzed. Conference room B. Now, KW. Sarah's stomach clenched. She grabbed her notebook and headed down the hall. Conference room B was small, windowless, and dominated by a table that seated 8. Catherine Walsh sat at the head, her laptop open, reading glasses perched on her nose. She didn't look up when Sarah entered. Closed the door. Sit. Sarah did both. Walsh kept reading for another 30 seconds. Then she removed her glasses and looked at Sarah with an expression that was somehow both impressed and annoyed. Your analysis was good, she said. Better than good. You identified risk factors my senior analysts missed. Your projections are sound. Your writing is clear. Sarah felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Walsh closed her laptop. Because now I'm in a position. You're competent. Possibly very competent. Which means I can't justify firing you. Even though every instinct I have says you're going to be more trouble than you're worth. I don't want to cause trouble, Sarah said carefully. I just want to do good work. That's what everyone says. Walsh leaned back, studying her. Here's what's going to happen. I'm assigning you to the Patterson acquisition project. You'll be working directly with me and 2 senior analysts. The work will be intense. The hours will be long. And if you make a single mistake, if you give me even one reason to question whether you belong here, I will fire you. Executive order or not. Do you understand? Sarah nodded. I understand. Good. Walsh stood, signaling the meeting was over. First team meeting is at 9. Don't be late. Sarah returned to the overflow room feeling like she'd just survived a near-death experience. Her hands were shaking slightly as she opened her laptop. Rough morning. She looked up. A man stood in the doorway, tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing jeans and a faded Stanford hoodie that somehow looked more expensive than a suit. He had the kind of face that was hard to read. Strong features, dark eyes, a slight smile that could mean anything or nothing. Can I help you? Sarah said, trying to place him. She'd studied the department org chart obsessively. She was sure she'd never seen his face. Just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Ryan. He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets, moving with the casual confidence of someone who belonged everywhere. I work on special projects. Heard there was a new analyst. Sarah Mitchell. She didn't offer her hand. Something instinctive holding her back. Special projects for which department? His smile widened slightly. I move around. Wherever they need me. It wasn't really an answer, and they both knew it. Sarah waited, saying nothing, a skill she'd learned from lawyers during scholarship interviews. Silence made people uncomfortable enough to fill it. Ryan's expression shifted, just barely, but she caught it. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. Well, he said after a moment, welcome to Hartfield. If you need anything, let me know. I will. Thank you. He left without another word, and Sarah sat very still, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall. Something about that conversation felt wrong. Like the pieces didn't quite fit together. She made a mental note to find out who Ryan really was and what special projects actually meant. But that would have to wait. She had 17 minutes until the Patterson team meeting, and she needed to be ready to prove she belonged there, even if she still wasn't sure she did. Chapter 2. The Patterson team meeting lasted 3 hours. Sarah sat at the far end of the conference table, notebook open, pen ready, while Catherine Walsh led a discussion so dense with financial jargon and strategic theory that even the senior analysts looked strained. The 2 other team members were exactly what Sarah had expected. Marcus Lee, a Yale MBA with 7 years at Goldman Sachs, who spoke in clipped sentences and barely acknowledged her existence, and Linda Crawford, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 40s who'd spent 2 decades in corporate development and had a habit of asking questions that exposed every weakness in an argument. Sarah spoke exactly 3 times in 3 hours, and only when directly asked. She'd learned quickly that in rooms like this, credibility was earned through careful listening, not eager participation. The Patterson CEO is meeting with our executive team next Wednesday, Walsh said as the meeting wound down. We need a comprehensive risk assessment by Monday. Marcus, you're handling the financial modeling. Linda, competitive analysis. Sarah. She paused, and Sarah felt everyone's attention swing toward her. You're responsible for operational integration. I want a detailed breakdown of how we'd absorb Patterson's workforce, consolidate facilities, and maintain productivity through the transition. Assume a 12-month timeline. It was the kind of assignment that should go to someone with actual experience. Sarah's entire professional history consisted of 3 summer internships and 0 acquisitions. But she kept her expression neutral and said, Understood. Questions? Walsh looked around the table. Marcus cleared his throat. Just one. Sarah, have you worked on an integration plan before? The room went very quiet. No, Sarah said simply, because there was no point in lying, and deflecting would only make it worse. Right? Marcus's smile was thin. Just wanted to make sure we're all calibrated on experience levels. Walsh's gaze sharpened. Is there a problem, Marcus? Not at all. Just clarifying roles. Good. Because if there's a problem with my team assignments, you're welcome to take it up with me directly. Outside this meeting. Her tone could have cut glass. Anyone else? No one spoke. We're done. Sarah, stay back. The others filed out. Linda gave Sarah a look that might have been sympathetic. Marcus didn't look at her at all. When the door closed, Walsh turned to Sarah with an expression that was difficult to parse. That was a test. Sarah said nothing. Marcus's trying to undermine you. He thinks you don't belong here, and he's not wrong to question why you were placed on this team over analysts with more experience. Walsh leaned against the table, arms crossed. But here's what he doesn't understand. I don't make assignments to be nice. I make them because they serve the project. And right now, this project needs someone who can think outside conventional frameworks. Someone who's hungry enough to work twice as hard as everyone else. Someone with something to prove. Sarah met her eyes. You think that's me. I think it might be. Or you might crash and burn spectacularly. Walsh pushed off the table. Either way, I'll know by Monday. Get to work. Sarah spent the rest of the day buried in research. She pulled case studies from 3 major acquisitions in the past 5 years, analyzed integration timelines, identified common failure points. By 6 p.m., when most of the department had cleared out, she had a working outline and a growing headache. She was debating whether to call it a night when her stomach growled, reminding her she'd skipped lunch. The office had a small kitchen area down the hall. She'd seen it during her brief tour yesterday. Maybe there was coffee. Maybe she could steal 10 minutes away from the screen before her eyes started bleeding. The kitchen was empty except for one person. Ryan stood at the counter, making tea with the focused attention most people reserved for brain surgery. He'd traded the Stanford hoodie for a gray Henley that looked just as expensive in its understatement. When Sarah entered, he glanced up and smiled like he'd been expecting her. "Late night already?" he said. "First week." Setting the tone. Sarah moved to the coffee maker, painfully aware of how wrinkled her suit had become over the course of the day. "You can't sleep anyway. Might as well work." She poured coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long and smelled burned. "Insomnia? Something like that." He dunked his tea bag with unnecessary precision. "How was your first team meeting?" Sarah looked at him over the rim of her cup. "How do you know I had a team meeting?" "Small department. People talk." "About me specifically?" "About everyone." His tone was light, but his eyes were sharp, watching her reaction. "You're just the newest thing to talk about." Sarah took a sip of terrible coffee and decided to push. "What do they say?" "That you're either very lucky or very connected. That Walsh is testing you to see if you break. That Marcus Lee already has a spreadsheet tracking your mistakes." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "That you're probably going to be gone in 6 months. What do you think?" "I think," he paused, considering, "I think you're smarter than you let on. And that scares people." It wasn't what she'd expected him to say. Sarah set down her cup. "You don't know anything about me. I know you didn't flinch when Walsh gave you an impossible assignment. I know you're here at 6 p.m. on your second day instead of going home. I know you ask good questions and give better silences." He tilted his head slightly. "Am I wrong?" "You're observant. Part of the job." "Which is what, exactly?" Sarah asked. "You still haven't told me what special projects means." Ryan's smile turned genuine. Persistent too. "I like that. That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It's not." They stood there in the fluorescent-lit kitchen, the coffee maker hissing softly between them, and Sarah felt something shift in the air. Not attraction, exactly, though there was something in the way he looked at her that made her pulse quicken despite her better judgment. More like recognition. Like they were both playing a game neither had agreed to, following rules they'd never discussed. "I should get back to work," Sarah said. "Probably." But he didn't move and neither did she. "Why are you really here?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "In this kitchen, right now. You said you can't sleep, but this building has 100 floors. You could work anywhere." Ryan's expression shifted. Just for a second, she saw something raw underneath the careful charm. Loneliness, maybe, or exhaustion. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "it helps to be around someone who doesn't know you well enough to expect anything." Sarah understood that more than she wanted to admit. "Yeah," she said. "Sometimes it does." The weekend came and went in a blur of spreadsheets, case studies, and cold pizza eaten at 2 a.m. while cross-referencing facility consolidation models. Sarah barely left her apartment except for emergency coffee runs. By Sunday night, she had a draft integration plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. She was too exhausted to tell which. Monday morning, she arrived at the office at 7 a.m. with revision notes and fresh eyes. The plan was solid. Not perfect, but solid. She formatted it, attached her supporting exhibits, and sent it to Walsh at 7:43. The response came 11 minutes later. "Good work. Team meeting at 2 p.m. to review all deliverables. KW." Sarah exhaled for what felt like the first time in 3 days. She used the morning to anticipate questions, shore up weak points in her analysis, and mentally prepare for Marcus to tear her work apart. By 1:45, she was as ready as she'd ever be. The conference room was already occupied when she arrived. Marcus and Linda sat across from each other, laptops open, not speaking. Walsh stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, her expression unreadable. Doesn't matter what he wants, Walsh was saying. The board authorized this acquisition. He doesn't get to second-guess the process now. A pause. Then tell him to come down here and explain it himself. She ended the call and turned to the table, her professional mask sliding back into place. Let's begin. They spent the next 90 minutes dissecting every aspect of the Patterson acquisition. Marcus's financial models were predictably excellent. Linda's competitive analysis was thorough if somewhat conservative. When they reached Sarah's integration plan, Walsh pulled it up on the screen and read in silence for what felt like an eternity. "This is aggressive," she finally said. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Too aggressive?" "No." Walsh looked at her. "Appropriately aggressive. You're proposing a 6-month integration timeline instead of 12. That's risky. It's also more efficient," Sarah said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Every month of operational uncertainty costs money and increases attrition risk. If we move fast with clear communication and strong leadership, we can minimize disruption and capture synergies faster." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "And if we move too fast, we create chaos and tank productivity." "Only if the plan is poorly executed," Sarah countered. "I've outlined specific milestones, contingency protocols, and risk mitigation strategies for each phase. Based on what experience? Based on research and analysis, which is what you asked for." Walsh raised a hand, cutting off Marcus's response. "Linda, what's your take?" Linda studied the screen, then glanced at Sarah with something that might have been respect. "It's bold, but the logic is sound. If we can get executive buy-in and commit the necessary resources, I think it could work." Marcus, he looked like he'd bitten into something sour. "The financial projections hold up. I still think the timeline is risky." "Everything is risky," Walsh said. "The question is whether the risk is managed." "Sarah, how confident are you in this plan?" It was a trap, Sarah realized. Say too confident and she'd look arrogant. Too cautious and she'd look weak. She chose honesty instead. "I'm confident in the analysis. The execution would depend on variables I can't control. Leadership commitment, employee buy-in, unforeseen obstacles. But given what I know now, this is the best path forward." Walsh was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "All right, we're going with Sarah's timeline. I'll present this to the executive team on Wednesday." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "Good work, all of you," Walsh said. "We're done here." Sarah gathered her things on autopilot, her heart still racing. She just committed them to an aggressive timeline based on 2 weeks of research and 0 real-world experience. If she was wrong, if the integration failed, it wouldn't just be her career on the line. She was halfway back to her desk when someone called her name. "Sarah, wait." She turned. Linda stood in the hallway, arms crossed, studying her with that sharp, assessing gaze. "That was gutsy," Linda said. "Defending your work against Marcus like that." "I was just explaining my reasoning." "No, you were standing your ground. There's a difference." Linda stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Word of advice? Marcus's got allies in this department. People who think you're a threat. You just made yourself a bigger target by outshining him in front of Walsh." Sarah felt cold. "I wasn't trying to outshine anyone. Doesn't matter what you were trying to do. It matters what it looked like." Linda's expression softened slightly. "I'm not saying back down. I'm saying be smart. Watch your back. And for God's sake, document everything." She walked away before Sarah could respond. Sarah stood in the empty hallway, Linda's warning echoing in her head. She'd been so focused on proving she belonged that she hadn't stopped to consider what she was disrupting just by being here. Who she was threatening. What she might be walking into. "Rough day." She spun. Ryan leaned against the wall a few feet away, hands in his pockets, that same unreadable expression on his face. "Do you just appear everywhere?" Sarah said more sharply than she intended. "Sometimes." He pushed off the wall. You looked like you could use a friendly face. I'm fine. Sure you are. He studied her for a moment. You want some actual advice? Or should I leave you alone? Sarah hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust him. She still didn't know who he was or why he kept showing up, but there was something in his eyes that felt genuine. Like he actually saw her, not just the inconvenient new hire everyone else seemed to see. Advice, she said finally. Stop trying to prove you belong. You're already here. That's enough. He said it simply, like it was obvious. The more you fight to justify your presence, the more ammunition you give people to question it. Just do the work. Let the work speak for itself. That's what I've been doing. No, you've been doing the work while simultaneously defending your right to do it. It's exhausting, and people can smell the desperation. His tone was gentle but firm. You're good at this, Sarah. Better than most people in this building. So stop acting like you have to earn what you've already been given. Something in her chest went tight. You don't know anything about me? She said again. But this time it came out softer, almost vulnerable. Maybe not. Ryan smiled, and for once it looked completely real. But I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong. And I know that feeling never really goes away. You just get better at ignoring it. Before Sarah could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway with her thoughts and a strange, aching sense that she'd just been seen more clearly than she had in years. Wednesday arrived faster than Sarah was ready for. Walsh had been locked in executive meetings all day, which meant the entire team was on edge, waiting to hear whether their plan had been approved or torn apart. 4:47 p.m., Walsh emerged from the elevator and walked straight to her office without making eye contact with anyone. She closed the door. The blinds came down. Marcus muttered something under his breath. Linda shook her head. Sarah sat very still, watching the closed door and trying not to think about what it meant that she couldn't read Walsh's expression. 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. My office. Now. Sarah's mouth went dry. She stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked across the department on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Walsh's door was open now. She sat at her desk, reading glasses on, staring at her computer screen with an intensity that made Sarah want to turn around and walk away. Close the door. Sit. Sarah obeyed. Walsh kept reading for another 15 seconds. Then she removed her glasses, sat back, and looked at Sarah with an expression that was impossible to interpret. The executive team approved your integration timeline, she said. Relief flooded through Sarah's chest. That's good. Thank you. Don't thank me. It wasn't my decision. Walsh's tone was flat. In fact, I was overruled on several key points, including the timeline. Sarah's relief curdled into confusion. I don't understand. You said they approved it. They did, but not because I recommended it. Walsh leaned forward, folding her hands on the desk. Someone in that room pushed for your plan. Hard enough that the CEO agreed to commit the resources necessary to make it work. Who? That's what I'd like to know. Walsh's eyes narrowed. Because whoever it was, they knew your work better than they should have. They defended specific details that weren't in my presentation. Which means they either had access to your original document, or someone briefed them. Sarah finished, her mind racing. Exactly. Walsh sat back. So I'll ask you directly. Who's your patron, Sarah? I don't have one. I don't even know what you're talking about. Then you're either lying or you're being used. And I can't decide which is worse. The words hit like a punch. Sarah felt her face heat. I'm not lying, and I'm not anyone's pawn. I applied for this job through normal channels. I accepted an offer. I've been doing the work you assigned me. That's all. Walsh studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she nodded. I believe you. You do. You're too angry to be lying, and too smart to play games this clumsily. She stood, moving to the window. But someone is playing games. With my department. With this acquisition. Possibly with you. And until I know who and why, you're a liability. Sarah's throat went tight. Are you firing me? No. Walsh turned back. I'm giving you a choice. You can keep your head down, do exactly what I tell you, and stay out of whatever political mess this is. Or you can try to figure out who's pulling strings and why. But if you choose the latter, you're on your own. I can't protect you. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection. Walsh's voice was softer now, almost kind. Especially from powerful people who think they're helping you. Sarah stood, her decision already made. I choose option 2. Of course you do. Walsh almost smiled. Be careful, Sarah. Power games in this building end careers. Sometimes worse. Sarah left the office feeling like the floor had tilted beneath her feet. Someone powerful was manipulating events around her. Someone who knew her work, who wanted her here, who was willing to override a senior director to push her plan forward. She needed to know who, and she needed to know why, which meant she needed help. The overflow room was dark when she got back. Sarah turned on the lights, pulled out her phone, and stared at the screen for a long moment before typing a message. We need to talk. Sarah. She sent it to the only number in her contacts that might have answers. Ryan replied 30 seconds later. Rooftop. 6 p.m. Come alone. Chapter 3. The rooftop of Hartfield Industries was technically off-limits after hours. But the door was unlocked when Sarah tried it at 5:58 p.m., and the alarm didn't trigger when she stepped through. Someone had been here before her. The space was mostly empty. HVAC units, industrial vents, a small maintenance shed in one corner. Seattle sprawled in every direction, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled over the city. The air was cold and smelled like rain. Ryan stood near the edge, hands shoved in the pockets of a jacket that looked military surplus but probably cost more than her rent. He didn't turn when she approached, just kept staring out at the city like he was searching for something in the distance. I used to come up here when I first started, he said quietly. Back when everything felt impossible. When I wasn't sure I belonged anywhere. Sarah stopped a few feet away, close enough to hear him over the wind but far enough to maintain space. How long ago was that? 5 years. Feels like longer. He finally turned to look at her, and in the fading light his expression was more open than she'd ever seen it. Vulnerable. Almost sad. You wanted to talk. Someone's manipulating me, Sarah said bluntly. Someone powerful enough to override Catherine Walsh. Someone who knows my work better than they should. And I think you know who it is. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then, why do you think I know? Because you're always there. In the kitchen. In the hallway. You show up at exactly the right moments and say exactly the right things. You ask questions like you're testing me. And you never actually answer when I ask what you do here. She stepped closer, her voice hard. So I'll ask you directly. Who are you? Ryan? Really? The wind picked up, pulling at her hair. Ryan looked at her with something that might have been regret or admiration or both. I'm the person who hired you, he said. The words didn't land immediately. Sarah heard them, processed them, but they didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. What? I reviewed your application. I flagged it for HR. I pushed it through to final interviews. He said it calmly, like he was reciting facts from a report. And when the hiring committee wanted to go with someone else, someone with better connections and a better pedigree, I overruled them. Sarah felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. You don't have that authority. You're not even part of the corporate strategy department. No, Ryan agreed. I'm not. Then who are you? He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, holding it out. Sarah took it with numb fingers. The card was simple, expensive looking, embossed with the Hartfield Industries logo. Ryan Hartfield, Director of Strategic Oversight. She stared at the name, at the familiar last name that matched the building, the company, everything around them. You're the founder's grandson, son of the current CEO. And yes, before you ask, that's why no one questions when I walk into meetings or access restricted files or override hiring decisions. His voice was flat, stripped of emotion. It's also why most people in this building either fear me or want something from me. Why I don't have real colleagues. Why I've learned not to trust anyone's motives. Sarah's mind was racing, trying to fit this new information into everything she thought she knew. The executive meeting, when they approved my integration plan. That was you. Yes, you defended my work. Details that weren't in Walsh's presentation. I'd read your original document. He didn't look away. I wanted to make sure it got a fair hearing. You had no right. The anger came suddenly, hot and sharp. I didn't ask for your help. I didn't need your help. Didn't you? Ryan's expression hardened. You think Walsh would have given you that project without pressure from above? You think Marcus and Linda would have listened to anything you said if they didn't know someone powerful was watching? You're good, Sarah. Maybe great. But this company eats good without connections. You would have been gone in 3 months. So what? You decided to be my patron? My protector. The word tasted bitter. Do you have any idea what you've done? Everyone in that department thinks I'm sleeping with someone or blackmailing someone or... Her voice cracked. They don't see me. They see your influence, your power, everything I've worked for, everything I've earned. It's all tainted now. I know. Ryan's voice was quiet. I know, and I'm sorry, but I'd do it again. Why? She nearly shouted it. Why me? You don't know me. We'd never even met before I started working here. Because I saw something in your application that reminded me of myself. He took a step closer. You came from nothing. No connections, no safety net, just raw intelligence and the absolute refusal to be defeated. You fought for everything you have. And I thought... He stopped, looking away. I thought if I could help someone like that succeed, maybe it would mean something. Maybe I could use this name, this power I didn't earn, to do something that actually mattered. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. Anger and understanding and grief all mixed together. You can't save me, Ryan. I don't need saving. I know that now. He looked back at her, and his eyes were dark with something she couldn't name. But it doesn't change what I've already done. Or what happens next. What do you mean? The Patterson acquisition, it's not just about corporate strategy. My father is using it to test whether I'm ready to take over the company. He's watching how I handle the politics, the decision-making, the pressure. Ryan's jaw tightened. And he's watching who I trust, who I promote, who I protect. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. I'm the test. You promoted me to prove you can identify talent. And if I fail, if you fail, it reflects on my judgment, which means I've risked my own credibility to give you this chance. He said it without accusation. Just fact. I'm not telling you this to pressure you. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what's really at stake. Sarah turned away, staring out at the city lights blurring in her vision. She'd worked so hard to earn her place through merit, through skill, through sheer determination. And now she was learning that none of it had been as clean as she'd thought. That power had been working behind the scenes all along. Invisible strings pulling her toward opportunities she'd believed she'd seized herself. I want to hate you, she said quietly. You should. But I can't. Because part of me understands. She laughed bitterly. And that might be the worst part. That I understand why you did it. Even though it's taken everything I worked for and made it complicated. Sarah, don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize again. Don't tell me it'll be okay. Just... She took a shaky breath. Just tell me what you want from me now. Because there's always something, right? You didn't confess all this out of pure honesty. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I want you to keep doing what you're doing. Prove that my judgment was right. Not for me. For yourself. Because you're brilliant, and you deserve to be here. And I won't let my interference take that away from you. And if I can't, if I fail despite your help, then we both pay the price. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried. But I don't think you will, because you're stronger than you know. Sarah looked at him, at this man who disrupted everything, who tried to help in the most damaging way possible, who stood here now with his privilege and his loneliness and his misguided good intentions, and felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "I need time," she said, "to process this, to figure out what it means. Take all the time you need. And I need you to stop interfering. No more surprise advocacy in executive meetings. No more pulling strings. If I'm going to succeed here, it has to be on my own merit. Even if that's harder." Pain flickered across his expression, but he nodded. "Okay. Okay." Sarah turned toward the door, then stopped. "One more thing." "Yeah. Why were you in the kitchen that first night?" "Really?" Ryan's smile was sad. "Because I wanted to meet you, the person I'd chosen. I wanted to see if you were everything I thought you'd be. And you were more." He said it simply, without calculation. "You are more." Sarah didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. She just walked away, leaving him alone on the rooftop with the wind and the city and the weight of his choices. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Sarah's life. Word had spread somehow, she suspected Marcus, that she had connections in the executive suite. People treated her differently now. Some with resentment, others with calculated friendliness, trying to leverage her perceived access to power. Jessica Park stopped having lunch with her. Amanda Pierce's comments grew sharper, more personal. And through it all, Sarah threw herself into the Patterson integration with a focus that bordered on obsessive. She arrived before dawn, left after midnight, survived on coffee and determination and the fierce need to prove that she belonged here through her work, not through anyone's influence. Ryan kept his distance. She saw him occasionally in the hallways, at department meetings where he sat in the back and said nothing. They didn't speak, didn't acknowledge each other beyond professional courtesy. It should have been a relief, felt like loss. The integration plan went live on a Monday in early March. Sarah had spent the previous 72 hours finalizing details, coordinating with department heads, troubleshooting problems before they became crises. When the first phase launched, she held her breath and waited for something to go wrong. Nothing did. Day 1 of the integration went smoothly. Day 2 even better. By the end of the first week, they were ahead of schedule on 3 of 5 key milestones. Walsh sent Sarah a terse email. "Good work. Don't get cocky." Sarah allowed herself exactly 5 minutes of relief. Then she got back to work. Week 2 brought the first real crisis. A facility consolidation in Portland ran into unexpected union resistance. Production stopped. Costs spiked. The executive team wanted answers. Sarah worked through the night, coordinating with HR, legal, and operations to negotiate a solution. By dawn, she drafted a compromise that protected worker rights while maintaining the integration timeline. Walsh presented it to the executives at 8 a.m. They approved it by 8:45. Sarah was in the overflow room, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and pure adrenaline, when Walsh appeared in the doorway. "Conference room. Now." Sarah's stomach dropped. She followed Walsh down the hall, trying to read her expression and failing. The conference room was empty. Walsh closed the door and turned to face her. "You saved the Portland integration," she said without preamble. "That union situation could have derailed the entire timeline. Instead, you found a solution that actually improved our relationship with the workforce. Thank you." Sarah didn't know what else to say. "Don't thank me. I'm about to make your life harder." Walsh pulled out a chair, gesturing for Sarah to sit. "The executive team is impressed with your work. They want to promote you." Sarah sat down slowly. "Promote me to what?" "Senior analyst. Effective immediately. It comes with a 30% raise, better benefits, and significantly more responsibility." Walsh's expression was unreadable. "It also comes with a target on your back. Every analyst in this department has been working toward senior level for years. You'll be promoted after 6 weeks. People will hate you for it. Then why offer it? Because you've earned it. Despite the politics, despite the whispers, despite everything, Your work speaks for itself. And I won't let good work go unrecognized just because the circumstances are complicated. Sarah felt something hot and tight in her throat. What if I say no? Then you're an idiot. But it's your choice. It should have been an easy decision. This was everything she'd worked for: recognition, advancement, proof that she belonged. But accepting it meant accepting that Ryan's interference had opened doors she might not have reached otherwise. It meant living with the ambiguity of not knowing whether she'd earned this or whether it had been given to her. Can I think about it? Sarah asked. Walsh looked surprised. Most people would have said yes immediately. I'm not most people. No. Walsh almost smiled. You're not. Take 24 hours. Let me know tomorrow. Sarah spent that evening walking aimlessly through Capitol Hill, trying to untangle her thoughts. Rain fell in a soft drizzle, soaking through her jacket, but she barely noticed. She'd proven herself. The work was good, everyone acknowledged it. But did that erase the fact that she'd only gotten the chance because of Ryan's influence? Did it matter if the end result was the same? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard about the promotion. You deserve it. R. Sarah stared at the message, then typed a reply. How do you know? I pay attention. You said you'd stop interfering. I'm not interfering. I'm observing. There's a difference. Sarah hesitated, then typed, I need to talk to you. The response came immediately. Same place. 8 p.m. Ryan was already on the rooftop when she arrived. He stood in the same spot as before, looking out at the city, and Sarah felt a strange sense of déjà vu. You came, he said without turning. I said I would. You could have changed your mind. I could have. Sarah walked to the edge, standing beside him but not too close. They offered me a promotion. I know. Of course you do. She wasn't even annoyed anymore, just tired. I don't know if I should take it. Why not? Because I don't know if I earned it. Because I don't know where your influence ends and my merit begins. Because... She stopped, the truth catching in her throat. Because I'm afraid that if I accept it, I'll always wonder. Ryan turned to look at her, and his eyes were dark with understanding. You want me to tell you that you earned it? That my involvement didn't matter? Yes. I can't do that, because I don't know either. He said it gently. Maybe Walsh would have given you the same opportunities without my interference. Maybe you would have impressed the executive team on your own. Or maybe not. There's no way to know now. Then what am I supposed to do? Take the promotion, Ryan said. Not because you're certain you earned it, but because you deserve the chance to prove you can succeed at that level. And then spend every day working to make sure no one, including yourself, can question whether you belong there. Sarah laughed bitterly. So I should just accept the ambiguity? Live with not knowing. We all live with not knowing, Sarah. Every successful person has some combination of skill and luck and timing that got them where they are. The only difference is most people don't question it. He stepped closer. You're smart enough to see the complexity. Don't let that intelligence paralyze you. Is that what happened to you? The question came out before she could stop it. Did you let the complexity paralyze you? Ryan's expression shifted, something raw and painful crossing his face. Every day. I know I only have this position because of my last name. I know people don't respect me for my work because they assume I didn't have to work for it. And you're right, it's paralyzing. Which is why I wanted to help you. Because I thought if I could use my unearned power to give someone truly talented a chance, maybe it would balance the scales somehow. That's not how it works. I know. His voice was barely above a whisper. But I had to try. They stood in silence, the rain picking up around them, and Sarah felt something shift between them. Not the anger of their last conversation, not the wariness of strangers. Something quieter, more honest. I'm taking the promotion, she said finally. Good. And I'm going to be better than anyone expects. Better than they can dismiss or explain away. I know you will. But I need you to promise me something. Sarah turned to face him fully. Promise me that you'll stop trying to save me. Stop watching. Stop intervening. Let me succeed or fail on my own terms. Pain flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. I promise. And one more thing. Yeah. Tell me the truth. Why did you really choose me? Out of all the applications you could have flagged, why mine? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Rain dripped from his hair, plastered his shirt to his shoulders. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Because when I read your essay about why you wanted to work in corporate strategy, you wrote about using business as a tool for creating opportunity. Not just profit, not just success, opportunity. For people like you who'd been told they didn't belong. He looked at her with something that might have been longing. And I thought if someone could come from nothing and still believe that, maybe there was hope for someone who'd been given everything and felt nothing. Sarah's breath caught. She saw him clearly then. Not the powerful heir, not the man who'd manipulated her career, but the lonely person underneath. The one who'd tried to do something good in the most damaging way possible because he didn't know any other way. Ryan, she said softly. Don't. He stepped back. Don't pity me. I don't deserve it. I'm not. She reached for him before she could think better of it, her hand catching his arm. I'm not pitying you. I'm seeing you. He went very still. Sarah, you made mistakes. You interfered where you shouldn't have. You complicated everything. Her voice was steady despite the emotion rising in her chest. But you also believed in me when no one else did. And maybe that doesn't excuse what you did. But it means something. It means something to me. Ryan looked at her like she'd just spoken a language he'd forgotten existed. Then, slowly, carefully, he covered her hand with his own. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. For the position I put you in. For the doubts I created. For making everything harder when I was trying to make it easier. I know. And she did. She could see it in every line of his face. Hear it in every word. I forgive you. His fingers tightened around hers. You shouldn't. Probably not. But I do anyway. They stood there in the rain, hands linked, the city glittering around them, and Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Not certainty. She still didn't know if she'd earned her success or been given it. Not absolution, Ryan's actions still carried consequences. But understanding, connection, the recognition of two people who'd both learned that sometimes the hardest person to save is yourself. I should go, Sarah said finally, though she didn't move. Yeah. Ryan's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Just once. You should. Tomorrow I start as a senior analyst. Tomorrow you prove you belong there. Will you? She hesitated. Will you be watching? His smile was sad and genuine. I promised I wouldn't. Right? Sarah pulled her hand away, already missing the warmth. Good. She was halfway to the door when he called her name. Sarah. She turned. For what it's worth, Ryan said quietly. I think you would have made it here without me. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe the path would have been different. But you would have made it. Because you're that good. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. That's a nice thing to believe. It's the truth. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and walked away. This time she didn't look back. Chapter 4. 3 months later, Sarah stood in front of the executive committee and presented the final Patterson integration results. The numbers spoke for themselves. Integration completed 2 months ahead of the revised timeline, productivity maintained at 94% throughout the transition, employee retention at 89%, 12 points higher than industry standard for acquisitions of this size. Cost savings exceeded projections by $6.7 million. When she finished, the room was silent. Then the CEO, James Hartfield, Ryan's father, leaned forward. Ms. Mitchell, that was exceptional work. Thank you, sir. But it was a team effort. Catherine Walsh, Marcus Lee, Linda Crawford, they all. I've read their contributions. His tone was dry. Your name is on half the critical decisions and 3/4 of the successful innovations. So let's dispense with false modesty. You led this integration, and you led it brilliantly. Sarah felt heat crawl up her neck. I appreciate that. I'm sure you do. James sat back, studying her with eyes that reminded her painfully of Ryan's. Which is why I'm offering you a position on my strategic advisory team. You'd report directly to me, work on the company's highest priority initiatives, and have a clear path to VP within 3 years. The room went absolutely still. Sarah's mind raced. This was everything. More than she'd imagined achieving in 5 years. Handed to her in a single conversation. Working directly for the CEO. A path to executive leadership. It should have been an easy yes. But something held her back. Some instinct that whispered this offer wasn't as simple as it seemed. That's incredibly generous, she said carefully. May I ask why you're offering it? James's expression didn't change. Because you've proven you can execute at a high level under pressure. Isn't that reason enough? Under normal circumstances, yes. Sarah met his eyes. But these aren't normal circumstances. I was placed in corporate strategy through an executive order. Someone on this committee advocated for my integration plan. And now, 3 months later, I'm being offered a position that would remove me from Catherine Walsh's department entirely. Your point. My point is that it feels orchestrated, like pieces moving on a board I can't see. She kept her voice level, professional. So I'd like to understand what I'm actually being offered before I accept it. One of the other executives, a woman Sarah didn't recognize, made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. James's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been approval. You're perceptive, he said, and right to be suspicious. The truth is, this offer serves multiple purposes. Yes, I think you'd be valuable on my advisory team. But I'm also testing whether my son's judgment about you was correct. There it was. Sarah had suspected, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a blow. Ryan recommended me, she said flatly. Months ago, before you'd proven anything. James folded his hands on the table. He argued that you represented exactly the kind of talent we should be developing, brilliant, hungry, unburdened by the assumption that you were owed anything. I disagreed. I thought he was being sentimental, romantic even about the idea of raw merit. Sarah's jaw tightened. And now I think he might have been right, which is why I'm offering you this position. But I want to be clear. If you accept, you'll be working for me, not for him. This isn't charity or mentorship or whatever else people might assume. This is business. Can you accept that? It was a test. Sarah understood that much. James Hartfield was offering her an opportunity while simultaneously making clear that she'd always be seen through the lens of Ryan's recommendation. That no matter what she achieved, some people would assume she'd been given rather than earned. She could accept it, take the position, prove herself, maybe eventually earn enough credibility that the whispers didn't matter. Or she could walk away, return to corporate strategy, build her career the slow way, without the shadow of Hartfield influence. I need 24 hours to consider, Sarah said. James looked surprised. Most people would accept immediately. I'm not most people. She'd said these words before to Walsh. They felt truer now. And this decision deserves more thought than an immediate reaction. Fair enough. James nodded. You have until tomorrow at noon. After that, the offer expires. Sarah stood, gathered her materials, and left the executive conference room with her head high and her heart pounding. She found Ryan in his office on the 48th floor, a space she'd never seen before. It was smaller than she'd expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound and almost no personal items except a single photograph on the desk. A younger Ryan with an older woman who had kind eyes and his same smile. He looked up when she knocked, and something crossed his face. Surprise, then pleasure, then careful neutrality. Sarah, your father offered me a job on his advisory team. Ryan went very still. I didn't know he was going to do that. Didn't you? She stepped inside, closing the door. He said you recommended me months ago, that this is a test of your judgment. That's not. Ryan stopped, running a hand through his hair. Okay, yes. I told him I thought you had exceptional potential. But I didn't ask him to offer you a position. I didn't even know you were presenting to the executive committee today. Why should I believe you? Because I promised I'd stop interfering. And I meant it. Sarah studied his face, looking for deception and finding only exhaustion. He looked thinner than he had 3 months ago. There were shadows under his eyes. You've been avoiding me, she said. Yes. Why? Because it was easier. He said it simply. Because every time I saw you, I wanted to. He stopped. It doesn't matter what I wanted. I made a promise and I've kept it. What did you want? Sarah's voice was softer now. Ryan looked at her with something raw and honest. To talk to you. To know how you were doing. To celebrate when you succeeded and offer support when things were hard. To be, he laughed bitterly. To be your friend, I guess. Which is pathetic, considering everything. It's not pathetic. It is, because you don't owe me friendship. You don't owe me anything. No, Sarah agreed. I don't. She crossed the office, standing close enough to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Close enough that he caught his breath. But I'd like to try anyway, she said quietly. Ryan stared at her. What? Being friends. Or whatever this is. I'd like to try. Sarah felt vulnerable saying it, exposed in a way she hadn't allowed herself to be in years. These past 3 months, I kept thinking about things I wanted to tell you, victories I wanted to share, frustrations I thought you'd understand. And I realized that I missed you, not the person who manipulated my career, not the powerful heir, just you. The person on the rooftop who understood what it felt like not to belong. Sarah, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She reached up, her hand hovering near his cheek but not quite touching. If you'll let me. Ryan's eyes were dark with emotion. I don't deserve this. Maybe not. But I'm offering it anyway. For a long moment he didn't move. Then, slowly, he reached up and caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. His skin was warm, and she could feel the faint roughness of stubble. I missed you too, he said hoarsely. So much it scared me. Sarah's breath caught. She'd known there was something between them, had known it since that first night in the kitchen, maybe, but hearing him say it made it real in a way that terrified and exhilarated her. What are we doing? She whispered. I don't know. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. But I know I don't want to stop. They stood like that, the moment stretching between them, full of possibility and danger and all the complicated truths they'd learned about each other. Then Sarah stepped back, breaking the connection before she lost her nerve. I haven't decided about the job offer, she said. Ryan blinked, visibly pulling himself together. Right? The job. Your father made it clear this is a test. Of your judgment. Of my abilities. Of whether I can handle working in his orbit without it destroying my credibility. What are you going to do? Sarah walked to the window, looking out at the sound. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to say no. To prove I can build a career without Hartfield influence. To show everyone, including myself, that I don't need powerful patrons. And the other part? The other part wants to say yes. To take the opportunity and prove I can handle it. To stop running from the complexity and just move forward. She turned back to him. What do you think I should do? I think, Ryan paused. I think you should stop asking other people what you should do and start trusting your own judgment. You're the smartest person I know, Sarah. You don't need my advice. But I'm asking for it anyway. He smiled slightly. Then I think you should ask yourself what you're afraid of. Really afraid of. And then do the thing that scares you most. Because that's usually the thing that changes you. Sarah considered that. What scares me most is accepting the job and finding out I can't handle it. That I'm not as good as I think I am. And what if you are? What if you're better? Then I've wasted 3 months worrying for nothing. Exactly. Ryan crossed to stand beside her at the window. You've already proven you can do exceptional work. The only question left is how high you're willing to reach. They stood in silence, watching the ferries cross the sound. I'm going to accept the offer, Sarah said finally. Yeah. Not because your father offered it. Not because you recommended me. But because I want to see how far I can go. She looked at him. And because I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Ryan's smile was genuine. I think that's the right choice. We'll see. Sarah moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Yeah. If we're gonna try this, whatever this is, we need rules. Boundaries. Because I can't have people thinking I'm sleeping with the CEO's son to advance my career. Agreed. So we keep it quiet. Professional in public. Friends in private. And if it becomes more than that, she hesitated. We deal with it honestly. No manipulation. No secrets. No using your influence to help my career. I can live with that. Ryan's expression was serious. And Sarah? For what it's worth, I think you're going to be extraordinary in this role. With or without me. I know, she said softly. But it's nice to hear you say it. She left his office feeling lighter than she had in months. Tomorrow she'd accept James Hartfield's offer. She'd start building a new phase of her career. One where she'd be even more visible, even more scrutinized. But for the first time since arriving at Hartfield Industries, Sarah felt ready. Not because she had all the answers. Not because she was certain she'd succeed. But because she'd finally learned that success wasn't about being perfect or proving anything to anyone. It was about choosing courage over fear, growth over safety, and trusting that she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. 18 months later, Sarah stood in the executive conference room, presenting the final phase of a restructuring initiative that would reshape 3 divisions and affect 2,000 employees. She spoke clearly, confidently, fielding questions from the board with the kind of assured competence that came from knowing her material inside and out. When the presentation ended, the board approved her recommendations unanimously. Excellent work, Ms. Mitchell, James Hartfield said. As always, Sarah smiled. Thank you, sir. She gathered her materials and left, nodding to colleagues as she passed. People respected her now. Not because of who she knew, but because of what she'd achieved. She'd spent 18 months proving herself over and over again, until even the skeptics had to acknowledge that she'd earned her position. It had been exhausting. It had been worth it. She took the elevator to the 48th floor, where she'd finally gotten her own office last month. It was small but had a window. She considered that a victory. Her phone buzzed as she settled at her desk. A text from Ryan. Saw the board approved your plan. Congratulations. Sarah smiled and typed back. Thanks. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Can't. Meeting with Tokyo office until 10. Rain check. Always. They'd been doing this for 18 months now, carefully balancing their growing relationship with the demands of their careers. It was complicated. People speculated, of course. But Sarah had learned to ignore the whispers. She and Ryan knew the truth. That what they had was built on mutual respect, genuine connection, and the kind of hard-won understanding that came from seeing each other's worst mistakes and choosing to stay anyway. It wasn't perfect. It was real. Her phone rang. Catherine Walsh's name appeared on the screen. Walsh, Sarah answered. I heard the board approved your restructuring plan. Well done. Thank you. I learned from the best. Flattery. But Sarah could hear the smile in her voice. Listen, I need a favor. There's a new analyst starting in corporate strategy next week. Smart, hungry, scholarship kid from a state school. Sound familiar? Sarah laughed. What do you need? Someone to show her the ropes. Someone who remembers what it's like to be the outsider. Someone who won't let her drown in the politics. You want me to mentor her. I want you to be what you needed 18 months ago. Someone who believes in merit over pedigree. Someone who'll tell her the truth. Sarah thought about the girl she'd been. Terrified, determined, so desperate to prove herself that she'd nearly missed the help being offered. I'll do it. Good. Her name is Maria Rodriguez. First day is Monday. After Walsh hung up, Sarah sat at her desk, watching the city lights begin to twinkle as evenings settled over Seattle. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The mistakes, The victories, the complicated relationships, the hard-won growth. She thought about Ryan and the patient way they were building something real despite all the obstacles. She thought about the new analyst who'd be walking into Hartfield Industries next week, carrying her own dreams and fears. And she thought about how far she'd come from that first day, standing in the lobby, visitor badge warm against her chest, terrified of being invisible. She wasn't invisible anymore. She'd fought for that, earned it, learned to accept help without shame and give it without expectation. Learned that power was complicated, success was messy, and the only way to move forward was to keep choosing courage. Sarah opened her laptop, pulled up a blank document, and started drafting a welcome message for Maria Rodriguez. Dear Maria, welcome to Hartfield Industries. The next few months are going to be hard. People will question why you're here. You'll question it yourself. But I want you to know something. You belong here. Not because anyone gave you this opportunity as charity. Not because the system is suddenly fair. But because you're brilliant and determined and willing to do the work. The path won't be clean. It never is. But that doesn't make it wrong. I'm here if you need me, to answer questions, offer advice, or just listen when it all feels impossible. You've got this. Sarah Mitchell, Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives. She read it over once, then hit send. Then she packed up her things, turned off the lights, and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove herself and help others do the same. But tonight, she'd celebrate how far she'd come. And maybe, if Ryan's meeting ended early, they'd find each other on that rooftop where everything had changed, where they'd learned to see past the power and the politics to the people underneath, where they'd chosen honesty over convenience, where they'd chosen each other, not perfectly, not easily, but consciously, deliberately, with full knowledge of the cost and the complexity. And that, Sarah had learned, was the only kind of choice that mattered. The kind you made with your eyes wide open. The kind you could be proud of. The kind that changed everything. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Love. See you on the next video.